I always knew there was gaps in my business. I've gone from essentially stuck at $10,000 per month, being scared about having to go back to a job or anything like that.
I'd like to think that I'm the best person for LinkedIn client acquisition. I think it's because I've been learning how to do the back end stuff of it, like the landing pages, like using the sales call transcripts.
To last month doing $27,000, I now have the confidence that I'm not worried if my business is going to fail. That's not even in my world anymore.
So before we get into it, for anyone who doesn't know you, who are you? What's your business? What were you doing before we started working together?
So I'm Blake Weston. I've been building a LinkedIn agency specialized on commercial real estate brokers for the past kind of 10 months. Before that, I've been kind of building different LinkedIn agencies, but I specifically came into this niche about 10 months ago. And when I did, I realized there was a huge potential to kind of take over and become the go-to agency within the space. And I noticed there's a lot of potential to make good money and to serve a lot of different clients. So I was kind of building it and I was having a little bit of success, but because I saw the untapped potential, I thought I need to reach out to Charlie and figure out how to take this to the next level. And that's when I reached out to you around 4 months ago.
Cool. Okay. What number were you stuck at 4 months ago? For how long before we started as well?
I was stuck around $10,000 USD for a good few months. I'd say from January to around when we started working together, which was about May. I was hovering up and down. I wasn't having any great months or any bad months. My monthly recurring clients were paying most of that bill, and then maybe I'd bring on a client every month or two.
Okay, cool. So then, like, before we actually dive into what we did to get you to where you are now, which obviously we'll get into the numbers soon, give me the transformation in one line then, like where you started, where you are now, revenue-wise, business-wise.
So I've gone from essentially stuck at $10,000 per month to last month doing $27,000. And not only that, but I just feel so much more confident and satisfied with my business too.
Yeah. For sure. I think that's one thing you've touched on the most as well. Like when you obviously came to me, you said you didn't want to hit record 30, 50, 100K months. It was more about feeling like your business was stable and that you could always sign the next client whenever you wanted to and kind of turn on the tap, which is a big thing we focus on. So when I say what's changed the most then, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Just personally how I feel around my business. I think I've discussed this with you many times. The biggest bottleneck for me is often my own head and my own perception of my business. So before, I mean, having like failed in a previous kind of agency that I was working, that kind of built this idea that this could fail at any time. And the being scared about having to go back to a job or anything like that. And I always knew there was gaps in my business. For example, having an email sequence, having a landing page. I knew there was gaps there, but I didn't know enough to fill them correctly. And having filled those gaps now, working with you, having improved the way I approach content, DMs, etc., I now have the confidence that I'm not worried if my business is going to fail. That's not even in my world anymore. I just know that I need to put in the inputs and I've got the systems behind me to keep scaling. Even if I had a bad month or 2 or 3 in a row, I know that I can keep it going. I have no fear anymore that it's going to fail or I'm going to have to go back to a job, etc.
Yeah. No, 100%. And like, what do you feel like was the one thing that helped you change your business to be in this place the most? Was it like one specific thing, such as the content, or a combination of things? Walk me through what you think the biggest changes were.
So I think it's definitely a combination of things. And if I had to rank them, I'd say the most important has been the content, because I mean, a great example of this is that I've been doing my own bottom of funnels, and I'll have some that hit really hard and I'll book 5 to 10 sales calls. And then I'll have 3 in a row that don't book many sales calls or book me 1 or 2. So me and you took one of my past bottom of funnel posts and reworked it a few weeks ago when I was with you. And I posted that last week and I booked like 11 or 12 sales calls off of that. It was the same case study of the same client. We just reworded it. I even used almost the exact same picture. So we just reworded the post, and I've learned so much about how to appeal to my ideal client through content and through using the right language that I've been able to book, 12 calls from a single post. And like my lead gen now is so much stronger. And I feel like if I ever need to get 5 calls booked in to get another client across the line this month, then I know how to do that. Or I can reach out to you and you can help me with one of my posts so that I can do that. And I think also, like I said before, there's been a lot of gaps I've managed to fill that I felt like I already knew were there when I was doing this on my own, but I didn't have the know-how on how to fill them. So I think the second most important thing has been the systems we've built behind the scenes. So when a client books in with me now, I have firstly a landing page that they land on where they confirm their call, they have FAQs, they have a case study, and actually examples of my clients to look through. This educates them so much, because before I worked with you, I was having so many clients come on calls with me and say, like, what do you actually do? They knew I did LinkedIn and they knew I did it for their niche, but they didn't know what that meant. Now, when I get on calls, and I've had 7 sales calls already this week, and they've all known what I do. They've known clients I work with, and they have an idea of what I'm about to pitch them.
Yeah.
Also, the email sequence that I mentioned before, I have clients who have said, I've already seen all your email sequence and I already know pretty much everything you're going to go through, which is just like a game changer. I think it's not just them no longer saying, oh, what do you do? It's the fact that they're coming on the call with a solid expectation. And if you imagine like a client getting on a call, prospect getting on a call with you, and they don't really know, they know what you do, but not exactly. They're never going to really make a decision on a call. Whereas if they come on the call ready, knowing what you do, with an idea of how the payments work, what it looks like for them, then the likelihood of closing them on the call is so much higher. And I now have clients agreeing to come on the call. And if they don't, they're always booking in a follow-up so that we can have another call to get them closed.
Yeah. No, 100%. And it kind of leans into my whole philosophy of like, rather than getting better at sales and learning how to handle objections, why don't we just remove the objections from the get-go, which is, in my opinion, the way easier way to do, the way easier way to do things. But okay, let's go back to like when you started, like Blake, 4 months ago. I know that it took maybe a month or 2 to get you over the line. And I know now from speaking to you that you regret waiting those 2 months. What was the thing that was holding you back from actually investing in me or a coach in general? And what kind of changed to get you across the line?
Yeah, so obviously I knew you from a couple of years ago, followed you on LinkedIn for so long. And my reservation wasn't around you, because I knew that you're the results you're putting on LinkedIn are legit. You deliver. You've done it in past businesses and now in this one. I think the reservation for me was I've invested in coaching before, a couple thousand, and it's not worked out on a couple of occasions with different coaches. The package they delivered is just inadequate, and that kind of put me off, because when my business did end up struggling and I needed that money, it was gone. So I was kind of in this scarcity mindset where if this fails, then that's, a certain amount of money that's now gone. And if I need it, I can't have it. But I think the big change for me was, we had our first call and I was getting ready for a period to just really focus on business and scale, because when we first spoke, I was traveling. And I just thought to myself, if I don't invest this now and my business fails, I'm going to regret it anyway. I might have an extra few thousand available to me, but I'm just going to regret. All I want it professionally in life is to have a successful business. I don't care about making millions, but I don't want to go back into a job ever again. I want to run my own business, because that's what fills me and makes me, wake up every morning. So I just told myself, if my business fails and I ignore this opportunity, I'm going to regret it more than if my business fails and I at least tried. So, that's what I'd say. And that's what I've said to people who have considered your coaching or investing elsewhere. You're going to regret it more if, in the worst case scenario, if you didn't invest.
And also, like, one thing I want to add to that, for anyone watching as well, is like, if you play the game to maybe win, you're way less likely to win. Whereas if you just play it to win and you put all your cards in, you're much more likely to actually succeed, which is obviously what you've done, and you've done very, very well off the back of it. What do you think, right? Obviously, I know you mentioned there you tried coaching before, it hadn't worked. Why do you think this actually worked compared to previous programs that maybe didn't?
There's a lot of reasons. Things outside of LinkedIn, because people are just thinking you might have a LinkedIn service, but building things like the dashboards where we track like close rate, no-show rate, are the transcripts, like putting all my transcripts to good use from the sales calls and from my onboarding calls. These sort of things have been probably what's moved the needle the most. These little things outside of LinkedIn. These things have allowed me to improve my LinkedIn content and improve my DMs. And I can't forget the offer doc, like going over my offer and my ideal client, refining that. Even though my ideal client, and this, is super, super niche, like it's not broad at all, but just going over that again and just having it firm in my mind has helped me just mentally kind of process everything a lot more. And then applying that to an actual system for sales calls. So, an offer doc, a sales call process that I actually feel confident in. I have calls, because my clients are all based in the US. Last night I had a call at like 9 p.m. and I've done the whole work day, I've been to the gym and I'm knackered, but I have a doc and a sales call process that I can go through that allows me to still get across everything I want to portray to the prospect.
Yeah.
And things like that, they're just a game changer that I never anticipated using.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what I'd like to think, that I'm pretty the best person for LinkedIn client acquisition. Whether that makes me sound cocky or not, I'm not sure, but I genuinely believe I am. And I think it's because most of the LinkedIn coaches, not all of them, but most of them just teach basic LinkedIn content, LinkedIn DMs, LinkedIn profile optimization, which is stuff that you can find for free now. Even in like some of my YouTube videos, for example. Whereas I've been learning how to do the back end stuff of it, like the landing pages, like using the sales call transcripts, like appointment setter SOPs, pre-call sequences, to make sure it all comes together really, really neatly. And I think that's basically what you just summed up there. Like the LinkedIn is just the funnel for everything else to work really, really smoothly. But yeah, okay. Describe the version of you before we started then. Like, what did a normal day look like in terms of like what you was doing, what you was working on, how you felt, etc.?
So I think when we started before we started working together, in terms of what I was doing on a day-to-day, I was very much still in the weeds with client delivery. So because I was in that scarcity mindset, I wanted to keep as much profit as possible. Even though like me outsourcing a client to my team is a relatively low cost for me, I still wanted to save that bit of money because I was in that scarcity mindset. So I think 3 to 4 mornings per week, I would be doing client delivery. And then on the 5th day, I'd be doing my own content. The content I was putting out was inconsistent. It wasn't to a high quality, not in just terms of lead gen, but even just like the engagement I was getting on my posts was so much lower than it is now. And I'm not someone who gets massive engagement because I'm so niche. But even back then, I was hardly getting any impressions on the posts. So I spent all my mornings doing that. And, as you know, I'm not someone who likes to work long days. Yeah. So I tend to log off early afternoon and go to the gym. So I'd maybe have a sales call if I was lucky, or I would just kind of mess around in the afternoon. Whereas, and then just to touch on me as my mindset and who I was at the time, I think I was more of a freelancer in a sense of I was running an agency, but I just felt more like a freelancer. I didn't feel like I had a business, not because of revenue, but because I didn't have systems in place. I didn't have the things I have today that make me feel like I'm running an agency. Like I couldn't confidently say, I have a LinkedIn agency specializing in commercial real estate. I couldn't say that because I didn't feel confident around it. Whereas, if we fast forward to today, I'm completely out of client delivery. The only thing I do in terms of client delivery is onboard new clients and set them up, and then I hand them over to my team. My team is like an extra 2 people compared to where it was before we started working together. Now I get online in the morning. I'll go over like my calls for the day. I'll check the trackers. Maybe I'll write. Let's look at my day yesterday. I logged in. I wrote about 3 of my LinkedIn posts for this week because I was behind. So I wrote them up. I went over my sales call trackers. I followed up some DMs. I followed up some past sales calls. And then in the afternoon, I had 2 sales calls. I logged off at the same time I used to log off. I'm not working any more than I used to. Logged off around 4, went to the gym, came back, and then had another sales call in the evening. I'm not working any more than I was, but I'm so much more productive. And I'm actually putting my time into things that are going to push me forward. Because when I was working on client delivery and I was in the sticks, my delivery is probably only 10% better than my team's delivery. The difference is pretty much intangible for my clients. So now I'm outside of that, I can actually put my time towards what matters. And I think most importantly, I feel like today I'm running a business, not because we did, 27K last month compared to 10K before I started working with you, but because it feels more tangible now. I have the back end stuff. I have the email sequence. I have the landing page. I have a load of strong case studies. My LinkedIn's a lot stronger than it was before. I feel like I've built this small business within built around LinkedIn. Whereas before, I kind of almost just felt like I was still a freelancer, which I'd been for years at that point.
Yeah. And what did you think your problem was coming into the coaching then? Because what I found is a lot of people think their problem is one thing. Usually they think it's a lack of sales skills or they need to just do more work. What did you think your problem was going to be when you came into this coaching program?
Well, I always knew my biggest problem was lead gen. And I think that goes for a lot of people who probably come into your program. But above all, like I've said before, it was my mindset. And I think we identified this on the first call. And even my hesitation to get on board in the first place is just my mindset. And I don't think that's because there's anything wrong with the way I think. I think it was mostly a confidence issue. So having the confidence to outsource all my client delivery and go all in on the things that are important, the high leverage tasks, having the confidence to get on sales calls and give across the right energy so that more clients come on board, just things like that. I mean, and it's not only did that low confidence state affect me in terms of the business and professionally, but it also affected me like in terms of my personal life, like just spending too much time on pointless things and worrying about the wrong things and not spending money in certain places, or getting into these strict routines where I had to be like, my life before was so rigid in the sense I wanted to be in bed by this time so I could be up to work, or I wanted to make sure on Monday, Tuesday I never did anything in the afternoon so I could focus on work. Whereas now, because I'm more confident and I'm not in that scarcity mindset, I just do what I want on a daily basis. I live how I want to. And not only has my business benefited from that, but I just have personally in a million ways too.
Yeah, 100%. So your problem was definitely lead gen, but like I think for 90% of my clients, it's definitely mindset as well. And I've fallen in that trap as well, where I was stuck at 10K a month, funny enough, as well, for about a year. And I also hoarded my money because I was like, shit, if it ever goes to zero, I want to keep as much of it as possible. So I barely spent anything. I was very scarce with it. It was only when I then got stuck at it for a year, I got fed up and paid someone, and then jump from 10 to 30. So I think it's always around mindset. And a lot of people don't realize that the fact they're hesitating is actually the reason they're stuck to where they are, or stuck at the same revenue level, is because they're leaning into the side of them that isn't confident they're actually going to make it. And as a result, they do the wrong actions, blah, 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 right? Anyway, that's a story for a different time. How long did it take from making that change to seeing results? Like, implementing the content systems, implementing the pre-call sequences, changing up your offer, blah, blah, blah. How long did it take from making that change to then actually seeing it go from 10 to 27K a month?
No, great question. So there was a couple of weeks where I just needed to really build some systems, get some things in place, build out the offer doc. So I spent a couple of weeks on that, and that felt like a lot of work at the time, but it definitely paid off. And then by May, I mean, I've got my stats pulled up here in the tracker, but I closed one thing I'd never done before is offered a higher tier to come on board and pay up front for like 3 months of ghostwriting and then go on to a monthly. Yeah. So I implemented that with you, and then I closed my first client on the 14th of May for that. And me closing one client for that, and then assuming they're going to stay on for at least 3 to 6 months after that, I'd already made my money back at that point within the first month. I had another 2 clients agreed on that month. And then honestly, like June was kind of slow because I went on holiday twice. I had 2 weeks off, probably wasn't booking as many calls with you as I should have been. And then July, we kind of fixed that problem. And I closed like 5 new clients who all paid up front with that new model.
Yeah.
And now we're in August. I mean, just to give you the numbers as well, like May was 15K, June went back down to 10K, and then July was 27K. And now into August, I already have 11 sales calls booked, and it's the 5th of August. I've had 6 or 7 of them already. I've closed one of them, and I have 2 or 3 from the last couple of days who look like they're going to close. So, things go well, and I have another, book another 5 to 10 sales calls. This could be a month that exceeds 30K.
Well, maybe we'll have to do another interview in a month. We'll have to get 2 interviews out. And it's them minor tweaks that like a lot of people don't realize. So obviously when we met up in London the other day, we sat down and done your bottom funnel content and really analyzed it. And like you said, since you made them changes, your content's been booking in a lot more calls, which is great. And obviously then people are showing up more pre-sold as well, which is, again, the whole aim of what we do. Okay, great. And then how does it feel to have people recognize you or your work now? Do you feel like you're, obviously, like you said, you're in quite a niche industry. Do you feel like you've gained more authority within that since this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because my niche is so small and everybody kind of knows everybody in one way or another, I feel like I've been trying since I started off late last year to become the go-to within this industry. And there isn't a lot of competition, but there is a few people doing a similar thing. And I feel like in the last couple of months, I've definitely become the go-to because, I've better been able to leverage my case studies. Because as you know, I have some really good case studies. I've delivered some really good results, and just being able to get them across better, whether it's through YouTube or LinkedIn content or on my LinkedIn profile, things like that have allowed me to position as the go-to. So people, and also another thing to mention there is like, even my offer doc that I run through on sales calls, people can clearly see through that doc that I probably have the strongest offer for that. Well, I know I have the strongest offer for that industry, but people are now seeing that what I see
Yeah, 'cause we
through
built it
those
after.
resources. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I'm now the go-to agency within the niche I'm operating in, which was always my goal really for this year, to become, the agency that people go to, not just because they've seen a bottom of funnel post, but because they know I'm the best and will deliver the best results within that space.
Yeah. No, agreed, 100%. And that's the point of the offer doc, right? Is to make it simple and make it easy to understand whilst portraying your value as best as possible. Because a lot of people, they try and sound too complicated, they overcomplicate the shit out of it, and as a result, no one understands what they do. So yeah, that's really good. Okay, kind of like wrapping things up then. Honestly, if you're being brutally honest with me and people watching, if you hadn't made this decision, where do you think you'd be right now with yourself, the business, etc.? Do you think you would have gone down? Would you have stayed the same? Would you have got to 27k?
Well, obviously, I definitely wouldn't have got to 27k. I mean, we spoke about this a matter of a month ago, and I said I don't feel like 25k plus is possible in the foreseeable future. I think it is possible one day, but I don't think it's possible right now. All I wanted this year was to consistently be around 15k USD per month. That was my goal by the end of the year. I have a few months in a row where I did that, and I felt confident at that range. And now I'm looking at the end of the year, and I'm thinking, if I'm not consistently doing 25k plus, then that's probably a failure on my end. So, I mean, to go back to the question, where would I be if I didn't invest? My business would not be where it is today. I probably would have stayed around the same. I mean, I have very low churn rate on my clients. I would have probably still been floating around 10k USD per month. Yeah. Maybe I'd add an odd client here or there. But I think the big thing for me is just, where would I be as a person and mentally if I didn't make the change? I'd still be in rigid routines. I wouldn't have gone on the trips that I've been on in the last 2 months. I've been away 3 times in the last 2 months. I wouldn't have been on these trips. I wouldn't have had the confidence to actually enjoy them instead of, working.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done a whole load of other small things that I've done on just a weekly basis and taken time away from work if I hadn't invested and built my confidence around my business. I know I can leave my business now for an afternoon or a morning or a few days and it not have an issue.
Yeah.
So I think it's less about where would revenue be, even though I think I would have been around a similar level. It's more about where would I be as a person, and that would not be who I am talking right now. Definitely not.
100%. I think that, again, like we spoke about it, when you came to me, you explicitly said, I don't want to hit record month. I just want to feel more confident in my business. And so we didn't focus on like raising your prices and, hitting 50k months within a month or whatever it was, right? We focus on making it consistent and getting that consistent lead flow and positioning you as the authority. Obviously, you already was the best, but making sure that people knew that as well. And I can see just from speaking to you, even when we met up last month, the biggest change from your end has been that you're not in that scarcity mindset no more. Like you're enjoying your money, traveling, taking time off, like you said, which is great. If you had to put a dollar figure on what delaying the decision would have cost you, how much would you say you would have lost out on if you hadn't invested?
Do you mean in terms of if I would have just decided when we first spoke, or if I would have never came on board?
When we first spoke, so 6 months ago, when you signed up 4 months ago, if you hadn't have decided to come on, how much money do you think you would have missed out on over the last 4 months we worked together?
Easily, over $20,000. If not more. This month's going to be really good again, so it could even be $30,000-$40,000 I would have missed out on, and that's just cash collected too. That's not all. My clients will now go on to retainers, which is over $1,000 per month. My clients stay for a long time. It could be closer to $100,000 that I would have missed out on if I never came on board.
Yeah. Agreed. And okay, like last couple of questions. I think like there's a select few clients that I believe perform really, really well. Like you being one of them, obviously Ritvik. I've done a ton of case studies as well, like Georgia, Peter, Alex. Right, I could go on forever naming names. I think, what do you think from your end has made you such a good client that's allowed you to go from 10 to 27k in 4 months? Like, what do you feel like shifted in the way you was thinking and made you commit to doing it, that made you become such a good client?
I think the big thing when I started off was that it felt very overwhelming. There was a lot I needed to implement. There was a lot that was missing from my business. To come on board and know that you need to redo your offer, get clear on your ideal client, build an email sequence, build a landing page, that feels like a lot of work. But I just had to knuckle down in that first 2 to 4 weeks and get that done. That was what the game changer was, that allowed me then to have the confidence and the time to put into lead gen and sign in more clients. I think that was the big thing for me, because if I would have delayed that and took 2, 3, 4 months to just get the simplistics over the line, then I wouldn't have been able to spend as much time with you focusing on content and my profile and the things that actually push lead gen, because all those things are great that I just mentioned. They're not going to book in calls. They're going to help nurture calls and help you when you actually have done the lead gen. So I needed to get that all in place. And once I had that in place quickly, that allowed me to then scale and collect more cash.
Yeah, exactly. And what would you say to someone who's sitting exactly where you were a few months ago?
I would say the same thing I said earlier, which is, what is the cost of you not investing? If I would have not invested in this, would my business have failed in 6 to 12 months? Would I have looked back and just regretted investing, which is, in hindsight, a small amount into something like this? Would I have regretted not doing that? And that's what I would say to anyone who's on the fence. What is the cost of not investing? Not what is the cost of investing, what's the cost of not investing?
Yeah, agreed. 100%. Okay. And then last question. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd want people to know, or that you think is important to say?
No, I think I just reiterate to people that it's not a LinkedIn service. Like, you're helping people using LinkedIn as a tool. I think that I've spoke to people who I've kind of been trying to refer to you, or seen like some of the engagement you get on your posts. It's not just a LinkedIn service. Like, this is a service that's going to help you build a stronger, more reliable business.
Yeah.
It's not just here's how to post on LinkedIn and here's how to do DMs. It's all the back end stuff that I found the most value in, because I'm someone who has a really strong background in LinkedIn and has worked on LinkedIn just specifically as a job for years.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I found value in all the things that were on the back end outside of LinkedIn. And then obviously you did add a lot of value to my content. I think you probably, and I've said this for years, for the last couple of years, you are the best person when it comes to conversion on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think people need to make note of that and consider that when they come on board, instead of just looking at it like this is LinkedIn content and DMs, etc.
No, I agree. And that's something I've been trying to push more. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, good 4-month run we've done. I know that we're planning on working on a few more things together, so that'll be sick. And hopefully if you do another record month, we'll get another interview uploaded. But yeah, I appreciate your time doing this.